Look, I'm not the guy who writes these stories. I scroll past them most nights. But after what happened to me and my wife in that little motel off Route 66 last month, I can't shake it. It wasn't loud, it wasn't violent. It was just smells. Normal smells that moved around the room like someone invisible was walking slow circles around us. And it all happened in the space of one single night. We'd been on the road since early morning, heading east through Missouri on the old historic stretch of Route 66. By the time the sun dropped and the highway signs started glowing, we were both beat. Carthage exit came up, I took it, and about 2 blocks off the main drag I saw the motel. One of those single-story places with the red metal roof and maybe 20 rooms total. The kind of spot you pull into at 11 p.m. when you just need a bed and a shower before you keep driving in the morning. No fancy sign, just motel in faded white letters. I parked, walked into the tiny office, and the night clerk handed me the key for room 9 without even looking up from his phone. The room was exactly what $45 gets you in a small Missouri town. 2 queen beds, brown carpet, a rattling AC unit under the window, and that faint, dusty smell every old roadside place has. My wife tossed her bag on the chair, kicked off her shoes, and we both collapsed onto the bed nearest the door. We talked for a minute about how many more hours to our next stop, laughed about the terrible truck stop tacos we'd eaten earlier, then killed the lights around midnight. The AC hummed steady, everything felt normal. First change hit around 1 in the morning. I was half asleep when I caught a whiff of my wife's perfume, that light citrus one she always wears. Except she was lying right next to me and she hadn't sprayed any since we left the car. The smell was strong, like someone had just walked past the foot of the bed wearing it. I nudged her and whispered, "You smell that?" She breathed in and said, "Yeah, that's mine, but it's coming from over by the TV." We both sat up. The scent was definitely stronger near the dresser, not where we were. We figured the AC was pulling air from the bathroom or something and just laughed it off. Switched the lamp off again. An hour later, almost exactly 2 a.m. by the clock, the smell changed. Now it was my cologne. Same deal, not faint, not imagined, the exact woodsy scent I put on that morning. But it was drifting from the corner by the door, like someone had just stood there for a second and walked away. My wife rolled over and said, "Babe, that's you, but you're right here." We got up, turned on the light, walked the whole room. Nothing. No cologne bottle open, of no clothes we'd worn earlier hanging anywhere near that corner. The scent just hung there for a few minutes, then slowly faded, like it was being carried away. We tried to sleep. Around 3, the AC kicked on again, and the third smell hit us both at the same time. It wasn't perfume or cologne. It was something we couldn't name. Kind of sweet but stale, like old flowers mixed with something metallic. And this one wasn't in one spot. It started near the window, moved slowly across the foot of the bed, and circled around to my side. We lay there frozen, tracking it with our noses the way you'd track a sound. Every time the AC cycled off, the smell would pause for a minute, then pick up again from a new direction when it came back on. My wife whispered, "It's like someone's walking around the room, slow circles." I told her to stop, but I felt the same thing. The scent kept moving, window to bathroom door to the second bed, back to the window. Never fast, never loud, just patient. By 4 o'clock, we were both wide awake, sitting up against the headboard with the lamp on low. We tried opening the window to let fresh air in. The new smell disappeared for maybe 10 minutes, then came back even stronger, now circling tighter, like whatever was making it had stepped closer to the bed. My wife kept turning her head, following the invisible path. She said real quiet, "It just passed right between us." I smelled it too, right in the narrow space above the sheets. We didn't argue, we didn't freak out. We just kept breathing it in and out, trying to convince ourselves it was the carpet, the pillows, old cleaning chemicals reacting to the AC, anything normal.
but normal stuff doesn't move in perfect slow laps around two people for hours. At 6:30, first daylight leaked through the curtains. The second the room got even a little gray, the circling stopped. The scents didn't fade gradually. They just cut off, like someone had walked out the door and closed it behind them. The AC kept humming. The room smelled like regular stale motel air again. We looked at each other. No big dramatic conversation, just, "You ready to go?" "Yeah." We packed in under 5 minutes. Checked out at the front desk. Same clerk, same bored nod. Back in the car, we pulled onto Route 66 and headed east without saying much for the first 20 miles. Every now and then, one of us would sniff the air in the car like we were checking. Nothing, just normal. Something spent that whole night walking slow laps around our bed, wearing our smells and one we couldn't name, waiting for us to fall asleep. I don't know what it was.
I don't usually talk about this kind of stuff. I'm not the type. I work in logistics, I pay my taxes, I go to bed at 10. But something happened to me last March on a work trip through Ohio that I keep turning over in my head, and I figured if I write it down, maybe it'll stop waking me up at 2 a.m. I was driving west on US Route 30, somewhere between Mansfield and Upper Sandusky. It was a Tuesday night late, around 11. I'd been on the road since 7 in the morning, and I was done. My eyes were doing that thing where headlights start to blur, and I knew I had maybe 20 minutes left in me before I became a statistic. I pulled into the first motel I saw. It was one of those old roadside places, 2 stories, exterior corridor, vending machine humming under a yellow light. The sign said, "Buckeye Rest Inn." I looked it up later. It's a real place. Been there since the late 70s, sitting right off Route 30 just east of Cary, Ohio. Maybe 40 rooms total, maybe 10 cars in the lot that night. The guy at the front desk was older, heavy-set, barely looked up from whatever he was watching on a small TV behind the counter. "Cash or card," he said. I handed him my card. He gave me room 116, ground floor, end of the building. The room was fine. Worn carpet, an old AC unit under the window, one of those comforters that smells like it's been washed 10,000 times. I didn't care. I set my alarm for 6, took my boots off, and laid down without even brushing my teeth. I fell asleep fast. I woke up at 1:47 a.m. I know because I checked my phone immediately, which I always do when something wakes me up. I lay there in the dark, trying to figure out what pulled me out of sleep. The AC was humming. Somewhere down the corridor, a door clicked shut. Normal motel sounds. Then I noticed the curtain. It was moving. Not from the AC, the vent was blowing toward the bed, not toward the window. The curtain was shifting slowly, almost breathing. I sat up and looked at the window and realized I'd left it cracked maybe 2 inches when I came in. Habit. I hate sleeping in sealed rooms. I got up to close it. When I got to the window and pushed the curtain aside, I looked out over the field across the small access road behind the motel. It was big, flat Ohio farmland, looked like it hadn't been worked in years. Pale brown grass, a few broken fence posts, one dead tree maybe 200 yards out. A half moon, enough light to see pretty far. There was someone standing in the field. I want to be careful how I describe this because I don't want to sound dramatic. It wasn't a monster. It wasn't anything supernatural. It was a person standing completely still, maybe 60 or 70 yards out, facing the motel, facing my window. I could make out the shape, 2 arms at the sides, average height, just standing there in the dead grass at 2 in the morning. I closed the window and locked it. I stood back and waited, heart going. I told myself it was a farmer, a drunk, somebody walking a dog.
but there was no dog, and nobody just stands like that in a field in the middle of the night without moving at all. I checked again after maybe 5 minutes. Still there. I called the front desk, rang 4 times, and the guy picked up, sounded half asleep. I told him there was somebody standing in the field behind my room. He was quiet for a second and then said, "Probably just an animal. Deer'll stand there all night." I told him it wasn't a deer. He said he'd take a look and hung up. I checked the window again 20 minutes later. Nobody there. I didn't sleep after that. I lay in bed with the lights on and watched the ceiling until my alarm went off. In the morning, I went outside to load my bag into the car, and I walked around the side of the building. I don't know why, just to see. The ground back there was soft from rain 2 days before. I remember the weather app showing rain in central Ohio on Sunday. There were footprints in the mud right outside my window, not from the field side, from my side. Someone had been standing on the narrow strip of ground between the building and the access road, right up against my window. The footprints were deep, like someone had stood there for a long time. They faced the window. There were no other footprints around them, no path in, no path out, just 2 feet pressed into the mud directly below where my curtain had been moving. I took photos. I still have them. I went back to the front desk and the same guy was there. I showed him the pictures on my phone. He looked at them for a long time without saying anything. Then he handed the phone back and said, "Probably kids." I drove to Upper Sandusky, wrapped up my stop, and got back on the highway. I've thought about this a lot since then. The rational explanation is that someone was just standing there, maybe casing the rooms, maybe on something. The footprints could have been from earlier in the day. The person in the field could have been anyone.
I'm not someone who gets rattled easily. I've driven across this country more times than I can count. Long hauls through Nevada, New Mexico, the kind of stretches where you don't see another set of headlights for 40 minutes. You develop a rhythm for it. Gas, coffee, sleep, repeat. This was late October, somewhere between Salt Lake City and Las Vegas. I was on US 93 southbound, about 20 miles outside of Ely, Nevada, when my eyes started doing that thing where the lane markers blur together. I know better than to push it. I pulled off at the next exit and found a motel sitting alone off the highway like it had been forgotten there. Single story, but maybe 14 rooms, a vacancy sign with a burnt-out V. The guy at the front desk was older, maybe late 60s, wearing a flannel shirt with a pin tucked behind his ear. He charged me $58 cash, slid a key card across the counter without much conversation, and pointed left down the exterior walkway. Room 9. The room was exactly what you'd expect. Carpet with a faint smell of cigarettes that someone had tried to cover with something floral. A heater that clicked when it kicked on. A TV bolted to the dresser. I dropped my bag, brushed my teeth, and was asleep within 10 minutes. I woke up around 2 a.m., not from a nightmare, just that abrupt kind of waking where your body decides it's done. I had rolled onto my side at some point, and the pillow had bunched up under my cheek. Something inside it was pressing into my face. Not sharp, just hard. Wrong. I sat up and squeezed the pillow. There was definitely something solid in there, not a spring, not a seam. I pulled off the pillowcase and felt along the inner fabric of the pillow itself until I found a small slit near the bottom corner, hand-stitched closed, but loose enough to open with 2 fingers. I reached in and pulled out a key. Old brass, the kind motels stopped using before I was born. Diamond-shaped head, actual teeth, the number 9 stamped in the metal, worn down but still readable. I turned it over in my hand for a long time.
Someone had cut a slit in this pillow, put the key inside, and stitched it back up. This wasn't something that slipped out of a pocket. This was deliberate. The pillow had been through God knows how many wash cycles since then, and the key had stayed right there, hidden in the stuffing until I happened to roll onto it at 2 in the morning on a Tuesday in late October. I put the key in my jeans pocket and went back to sleep. I don't know why I didn't leave right then. I think part of me didn't want to be the person who drives away from a motel at 2 a.m. over an old key. At 7 a.m., I packed up and walked to the front desk. The same guy was there, same flannel shirt, same pen behind his ear. I wasn't sure how to start the conversation, so I just said I'd found something in my room and wanted to ask about it. Before I could say anything else, before I could describe it or pull it out of my pocket, he looked at me and asked, "How'd you sleep?" Not, "What did you find?" Not, "Is everything okay?" Just that. I watched his face when he said it. There was something careful in it, like he already knew something was off and was deciding how much he wanted to confirm. "Fine," I said. "Why do you ask?" He shrugged, but it was a slow shrug. "Long drive, just checking." I reached into my pocket and set the key on the counter. The change in his face was not dramatic. That's what I want to be clear about. He didn't go pale. He didn't step back. It was more like watching someone's expression go somewhere private, somewhere they didn't want you to follow. His jaw tightened slightly. He looked at the key for several seconds without touching it. "Where did you find this?" he asked. "Inside the pillow. Someone had cut a slit and put it in the stuffing." He looked up at me then. Something moved behind his eyes that I couldn't read. He picked up the key carefully, turned it once, and set it back down on the counter. "This opens the storage room behind the building. There's a padlock back there. Only one lock left on this property that still takes a physical key." I waited for more. He didn't offer it. "Why was it hidden in my pillow?" I asked. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "That storage room hasn't been opened in 11 years. I don't know how the key ended up where you found it." He said it plainly, like a fact, not like an apology, and I believed him, which somehow made it worse. He asked me to leave without charging me for the parking. Then he slid the key back toward me across the counter without a word. I picked it up and put it in my pocket without asking why. I thanked him, and he nodded like he understood that was the end of the conversation. I walked to my car. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe I just needed to know if the key actually worked, if this was real, or if the old man was confused about what lock it opened. I drove around to the back of the building instead of pulling onto the highway. There was a storage room. Concrete block construction, no windows, one metal door, a padlock on the hasp. Exactly what he'd described. I got out of my car and stood in front of it for a moment. I put the key in the padlock. It opened. The mechanism turned clean and easy, not stiff, not rusted, like it had been oiled last week, which made no sense for a room that hadn't been opened in 11 years. I stood there holding the open padlock in my hand and looking at the door. I didn't go in. I put the padlock back on the hasp without clicking it shut, got in my car and drove back to US 93 southbound. The whole drive to Vegas, I kept coming back to the same question, not what was inside the room, but that one small mechanical detail I couldn't explain. The lock had turned too easily. 11 years of sitting untouched, and it opened like it had been oiled last week. Someone had been maintaining it. I don't know what that means. I'm not sure I want to. But every time I stop at a motel now, the first thing I do is squeeze the pillow before I lay my head on it.
I don't usually write stuff like this, but I need to get it off my chest. If you've ever driven cross-country, you know the kind of motels I'm talking about. Cheap, faded signs, parking lot full of cracked asphalt, curtains that don't quite close. The kind of place you pick when you're too tired to keep driving. When you tell yourself, it's just one night, I'll be fine. That's what I thought last summer, somewhere off I-80 in Nebraska. I'd been driving for 12 hours straight, and the glowing red vacancy sign felt like salvation. The lot was empty except for one beat-up pickup. The office smelled faintly of cigarettes and pine sol. The clerk barely looked at me when I signed the register. He slid me a key with a plastic tag that read, Room 12. The room was exactly what you'd expect. Faded carpet, buzzing fluorescent light, bedspread patterned with shapes that might have been flowers once. I dropped my bag, locked the door, and collapsed on the bed. I should have passed out immediately, but something felt off. It wasn't the usual motel grime. It was the silence. No highway noise, no hum of AC units from other rooms, no footsteps outside. Just dead quiet. Around midnight, I woke up thirsty. I reached for the tap in the bathroom, but the water sputtered brown before running clear. As I filled the glass, I noticed something scratched in the mirror's corner, "Don't stay." I laughed nervously, probably some bored teenager with a pocket knife. Still, I couldn't shake the unease. Back in bed, I tried to sleep. That's when I heard it, a faint creak, like weight shifting on the floorboards. My first thought was the clerk had come in somehow. I sat up, heart pounding, but the door was still locked. The sound came again, closer this time. I told myself it was the building settling. Old motels make noises. But then I realized it wasn't random. It was deliberate, slow, like someone pacing. I pressed my ear to the wall. Nothing. But when I pulled back, I noticed the carton had shifted, just slightly, like someone had brushed past it. I froze. My phone was on the nightstand, but the signal was dead. No bars. I tried the motel's landline, no dial tone. That's when I remembered the pickup outside. Maybe the driver was in another room. Maybe I wasn't alone after all. I cracked the door and peeked out. The lot was empty. The pickup was gone. Back inside, I locked the door again, double-checked the chain. My pulse was hammering. I told myself I was being paranoid, but then I saw it. The carpet near the bathroom was damp, a dark patch spreading slowly. I kneeled down. The smell hit me first, metallic, sour, not water, something thicker. I backed away, stomach turning. The damp patch grew, inching toward the bed. I grabbed my bag, ready to bolt, but when I reached for the door, I saw the chain had been twisted. Not broken, twisted, like someone had taken it apart and reattached it wrong. That's when I lost it. I shoved the door open and sprinted across the lot. The office was dark, clerk gone, no cars, no lights, nothing. Just me and the buzzing sign. I didn't stop running until I hit the highway. Eventually, a trucker picked me up. He asked where I'd come from. I told him about the motel. He frowned. "Son, there's no motel out there. Closest one's 20 miles back." I insisted. "Room 12, the clerk, the pickup." He shook his head. "Son, I've been driving this route 20 years. That place burned down in '98. Whole thing condemned." I didn't argue. I just sat there, clutching my bag, staring out at the dark fields. I've checked since then. He was right. The motel doesn't exist anymore. But I still have the key tag. Room 12. I manage the Desert Rose Motel in Arizona. Been doing it for 3 years now. Small place, 18 rooms, mostly truckers and families breaking up long drives. The owner lives in Phoenix and never visits, so I run everything myself. Last month, I started getting complaints about room 7. First, it was a couple from Minnesota. They checked out at 6 a.m. 2 days early and wouldn't tell me why. Just threw the key on the counter and left. I found the room perfectly clean, bed made, towels folded, like nobody had stayed there at all. Then a truck driver lasted one night. He came to the office at midnight, pale and sweating. "I'm not staying in that room. Something's wrong with it." "What's wrong?" "The checkout time. It keeps changing." I didn't understand what he meant until I went to look. There's a little placard on every door listing the rules and checkout time, 11 a.m. But the one on room 7's door said 12 a.m., midnight. I replaced it with a new placard. Problem solved, I thought. 2 nights later, a woman named Patricia checked into room 7. She seemed normal, late 50s, traveling alone, paid cash for 3 nights. Around 11 p.m., she came to the office. "Excuse me, but there's someone knocking on my door saying checkout time is past." "Check's not until 11 a.m. tomorrow." "That's what I told them, but they keep knocking." I grabbed my master key and walked over with her. Nobody was in the hallway. The placard on her door had changed again. Checkout time, 11 p.m. I felt cold. I'd replaced that placard myself. "Ma'am, I'm going to move you to room 12, no extra charge." She agreed quickly. As we gathered her things, I noticed she'd barely unpacked, like part of her knew not to get comfortable. After she left, I sat in room 7 and waited. At exactly 11:47 p.m., someone knocked on the door. 3 sharp knocks. I opened it. The hallway was empty. The knocking came again, but from inside the room, on the bathroom door. I opened it slowly. Nobody there. But written in the condensation on the mirror were 2 words: checkout time. I'm not ashamed to say I left that room and locked it. I marked it as under maintenance in the system. But the next morning, I found a checkout receipt slipped under my office door. It was from room 7, dated that night, with a name I didn't recognize. James Garrett. Total stay? Forever. Balance due? Everything. I looked up James Garrett in our old records. I had to go back 7 years, to before I worked there. He'd stayed in room 7 for 2 weeks in August 2016. According to the notes, he'd asked for late checkout on his last day because he was waiting for his son to pick him up. The previous manager had approved it. There was a phone number listed. I called it. A younger voice answered. "Hello? Hi, I'm calling from the Desert Rose Motel. This might sound strange, but did you have a father named James Garrett?" Long silence. "Yes. He died 7 years ago. Why?" "I'm sorry for your loss. Can I ask, what happened?" "He was staying at that motel, waiting for me to pick him up. I was supposed to get him by 11 a.m., but I got stuck at work. Kept pushing it back. Noon, then 2 p.m., then 5 p.m. I finally left at 8 p.m. His voice cracked. "When I got there around 11, I found him in the room. Heart attack. The manager said he'd been dead for hours, probably since afternoon. He'd been waiting by the window." My throat felt tight. "Room 7? "Yeah. How did you know that?" I didn't answer that. "Did you ever come back after?" "Once, to get his things, but I couldn't make myself go inside. I left. The manager boxed it all up and mailed it to me." After we hung up, I understood. James Garrett had died waiting for checkout time, waiting for his son who never came when he promised. And now he was still waiting, still asking everyone who stayed in his room, "Isn't it time to leave yet?" I opened room 7 and sat on the bed. "Mr. Garrett, I don't know if you can hear me. Your son came. He was just late, but he came. You can go now." Nothing happened. I felt foolish. Then I noticed something on the nightstand. An old watch I'd never seen before, stopped at 3:47 p.m. Probably been hidden behind the lamp for 7 years. I took the watch outside and placed it on the front office counter where lost and found items go. Then I called his son back. "I found your father's watch. I think he'd want you to have it." He came the next day, and when he held that watch, he cried. "This was his father's watch. He never took it off. I've been looking for it for 7 years." That night, I checked room 7. The placard had changed back to 11 a.m. Nobody's complained about it since. I rent it out normally now. But sometimes, early in the morning, around 6 a.m., I see the curtain in room 7 move, like someone's looking out the window. Not waiting anymore, just watching the sunrise.